Session is just about to begin. Thank you. We're commencing it now. I would request you all to please be seated. Can I request you all to please settle down so we're ready for the next session to commence? Can I request you all to please be seated? Thank you. We will now begin the first part of the session. For that, I would request you to please turn your attention to the screens for a video interview that I conducted with Arif Hasan, architect and urban planner and chairman of the Urban Resource Center. We'll watch a video now.
Today, our conversation will explore how Pakistan's cities are changing, what that means for our future, and why they often fail the people they're meant to serve. So how have urbanization trends transformed Pakistan over the last 20 years?
Well, I think the transformation began much before 20 years. And those trends have continued. They haven't ended. I think the major trend is social, which of course is the result of economic change. The extended family has reduced considerably. The nuclear family has evolved and consolidated, especially in the urban areas. And and that gives a lot of freedom to individuals within a nuclear family. So women can acquire education without pressure from their aunts and uncles, etc., not to have an education. I think also the freedom of marrying whom they want, although this is not consolidated, but the trend is certainly there, even in the low-income groups, that's certainly there. It has also changed settlement patterns, because nuclear families living next to each other is a very different phenomena from extended families living in a neighborhood. So that change has also taken place. But above all, I think in the rural area, because of a change in production patterns, mechanization, fertilizer, middleman economy, the Aarti, for example. All this has given rise to an economy where cash is desperately needed, and that cash is not available in the rural areas. The barter economy, which once functioned, is no longer there. So that is a push factor. And then the attraction of a town, especially for young men, recently freed from the oppression of tribal control. I think that is also a great attraction. And then freedom from debt to some extent, because you borrow for marriages, you borrow for an education, you borrow from shops for food, etc. There's a big borrowing economy. That borrowing is easier in an urban setting than in a rural setting. I mean, it's easier in a rural setting, but the amount that you borrow is very limited, whereas you get a much larger sum in the urban areas.
So you're saying that's what pushes them to come towards urban areas?
That is one of the major factors. Education is another big factor. People want their kids educated. And it's easier to get an education, at least primary and secondary education, in the urban areas. Of course, there are problems with it. People don't want to send their children to government schools because they feel that government schools are no good, although they may be free or low cost. They like to send their children to private schools within low-income settlements or middle-income settlements. They are expensive, so they have to take a terrible decision which child to send to school and which to send to work. So this is a big problem which I have come across again and again. So that's one factor. But when you come to universities, there are no universities in poor middle-income settlements. So you have to go far away somewhere to attend university, which means transport costs, which means time, and which means increasing fee for the university. So it becomes extremely difficult. So you have to, again, choose who can go and who cannot go. But in most cases, they do not go. But they would like to push the women into the university with great advantages in that. For one, they get better marriage proposals, which is very important in Pakistan. So that factor is there. Second, you manage to get better jobs. For instance, all these malls that have come up, girls are preferred, but the girls have to be educated. They have to speak English. They should know how to read and write. So that factor comes into it. So education is important, especially for girls. And girls are terrible things. Once they get an education, I'm not joking, I've come across this again and again. Once they get an education, they get a better job than the men, then they boss over the whole household. I've seen that again and again. So yes, society is changing and urbanization has helped to change it.
So, one of the questions we have for you here is, how inclusive is the national housing policy at present? And what problems does this pose for the disenfranchised in the society?
Well, I think there is no housing policy for the poor. It's almost entirely the private sector that deals with this. And since the private sector deals with it, the issue of affordability comes into play. And if something is unaffordable, it means it doesn't exist for the poor. So that is the situation. However, we had one program which had the possibility of providing improved living conditions for the people of this country. And that was the Kachi Abadi Improvement and Regularization Program, which meant that settlements that were already there, the people could get a lease, and after getting a lease, they could own that property. Once they own that property and they are secure, then they'd invest in it. And where this did happen, they did invest in it. But the problem was huge. So, if you look at Karachi, more than half of Karachi's housing has been produced by the informal sector. So what are you going to do with it? If you're going to apply those same old laws कि lease होनी चाहिए, तो नहीं होगी. So what do? Question mark. So you let it go. Make conditions easy. Give ownership of property easily without all these 11 stages and huge number of documents, and which no poor man can do. Asking them to give us a plan of your house. which might take many days getting it through, many visits to officialdom, and being treated with suspicion and aggressiveness. So what happens? A middleman steps in. He takes money and he does this process for you. Now, this has happened in many cases, but then the whole lease process comes to an end. Why it comes to an end, I don't know, but it comes to an end. And it stops happening. Also, this is in such large numbers that people think, हमें कौन हटाएगा? इतनी बड़ी and they are right. They could not. So the biggest problem is affordability. Problem number 2, the only space available for the poor is at the city's fringe, because everywhere else the real estate takes that land away from the poor, takes the land away from the government. And so they are pushed out onto the periphery or environmentally degraded areas that the rich don't want. Okay. This creates enormous problems. Problem number 1, going to work and coming back, cost and time. Women working, children going to school. All these problems arise. So what happens? The old Kachi Abadis, which are near the center of the town when they were built long ago, they become high-rise. The informal sector invests money in that, purchasing those plots from the original owners and going up. So where 10 families or 12 families lived in a place, now about 30 families. But the conditions are, the density issues are very serious. Because you have, if you take the center of Karachi or certain working class areas, you might have 8 persons to a room. Even more than that, if it is in 2 or 3 shifts. So the housing conditions are extremely bad. There is no policy. None of these, and that they are serious, and there is a demand for them. You can judge by the fact that every government that comes to power promises many million houses or whatever. But nobody has produced any amount of houses. The People's Party now is producing these one-room houses. Let's see how it works out.
In light of climate change and climate disasters, rapid urbanization, and the growing informalization of economies and population growth, what are some of the most pressing challenges, in your view, that we are facing as a society?
I think in the case of urban areas in Pakistan, the most challenging thing is flooding. We don't know when there will be heavy rainfall, and we don't know when it will happen. And our cities are not meant for taking heavy rains. Also, those cities that are near mountainous areas or hilly areas, like Karachi is, for example, they can receive much more rainfall and much more flooding than just through rainfall. Like the Kitsar range in our neighborhood gives us a lot of water, which our city can't absorb. Now, how can we deal with this? This requires an enormous amount of funds to have a new drainage system that can take this to the sea. But the most serious thing in the case of Karachi is that Karachi's outfalls to the sea cannot take this pressure of water. Before, there was no construction, so the outfall could be huge, it could shrink. It had the possibility to modify itself which after the construction of housing, like Defence Society, doesn't have the possibility at all. So you go in for pumping, which is expensive. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is really related to heat islands. And over there you need three things to deal with it. One, you need insulation, you need cross ventilation, and you need sufficient external space to accommodate people. Now, we never thought in these terms because these things didn't exist. But now we have to think in these terms. And that's a huge expense also, which the state cannot bear. So you have cheap insulation that people can put up themselves. You have cross ventilation, which people can put in themselves. So it's principles that they have to know. And second aspect is density. You have to control density. That requires land. And there are major differences in density. Defence Society has a density of about 85 to 100 persons per hectare. Liari has a density of about 2,500 persons per hectare. So this usage of land requires a major land reform, which restricts ownership of land to a certain limit, which has conditionalities on the usage of land, limiting densities. But more important than that, which can easily be done, is a non-utilization fee on land, which will make vacant land available for development, which it isn't at present. You can own as much land as you like and say, I'm not going to pay a penny on it. So these are land reforms, there are various other things as well related to communities and culture.
Okay, so this brings me to my final question to you, which is despite witnessing repeated cycles of policy failure for 5 decades and more, actually, what gives you hope that the next generation can reshape Pakistan's development paradigm?
I don't know what gives me hope, but without hope you cannot keep working. But what really gives me hope is that this generation, the one which we started calling Gen Z, it's outspoken. It has no respect for its parents, it has no respect for its teachers, and it has no respect for the opinions. So that gives me enormous hope. I think with these qualities, they can think anew, and we need to think anew in a world of new technologies, in a world of anger, mistrust, violence.
Injustice.
So that gives me great hope.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. We will now move on to the in-person conversation portion of this session with Barrister Murtaza Wahab Siddiqui and Ms. Aisha Laghari. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a couple of questions that probably are representative of the audience that is sitting over here. And the questions are going to be particularly around Karachi. So as we know that Karachi's population has doubled in the last 30 years, and it's one of the fastest growing cities globally. What is your administration's long-term population management strategy for the city, given that it may cross 28 million people by 2030?
I think Pakistan is facing too many problems. And I think if there is one common denominator amongst all of those problems is the ballooning population. Karachi being arguably the only cosmopolitan city of Pakistan faces the brunt of the ballooning population. I'd like to give you a number just to exemplify this point. when Pakistan came into being, the first census took place in 1951, and the population of Karachi was 1 million. In 1995, Karachi's population increased to 8.5 million, and today, as per the census of 2023, we are a city of 20.3 million, which again is debated. A lot of people say that this is not perhaps the fair number of people that reside in Karachi. And I want to compare now Karachi with two other international cities like New York and London. New York in 1947 had a population of 74 lakh people. Karachi was 1 million in 51. New York was 7.4 million in 1947. In 1995, when Karachi was at 8.5 million, thereby increasing 8.5 times, New York stood at 7.5 million. And today, New York is at 8.5 million. London started off in 1947 with 82 lakh people. In 95, the population came down to 7 million people, and right now it's a city of 9.8 million people. So perhaps, there will be no other example anywhere in the world where a city's population has increased 20 times over the last 70, 75 years. That shows that perhaps one aspect is that the state has not prioritized the issue of ballooning population. The second aspect is that perhaps the state has not developed alternate places for people to come and reside. So people from all over Pakistan, they come to Karachi, perhaps for better livelihood, for economic opportunities. It is a more accommodating city. But if Pakistan had developed more coastal cities, perhaps, if coastline is the important aspect here, if Karachi, let's say, if Pakistan had developed Gwadar 50 years ago, if Pakistan had developed a port at Vindar 20, 25 years ago, let's say another port was developed at Zulfikarabad in the province of Sindh, perhaps the population would not have focused purely on in Karachi. And unfortunately, that ever-rising population leads to all sorts of challenges, whether it's municipal challenge, whether it is infrastructure challenge, whether it's challenge of educational opportunities, health opportunities, facilities. So that leads to all the problems. So I'm glad that this aspect is now being discussed. And if we are discussing about it, we should now be focusing on the opportunities that can come out of it. And that one opportunity is that the world is going towards controlled population, and we already in Pakistan, we have 250 million people. Unfortunately, majority of those people are not skilled. They don't have the training as to how will they survive. Hence, they again drain out the resources of the state. So I think as a matter of policy, Pakistan should be focusing on developing more cities alternate to Karachi so that the population can be, moved to other cities as well. Other cities can be developed. Secondly, we should be focusing on the aspect of training those people, those individuals, so that they contribute to the urban infrastructure or the rural infrastructure of that particular city, which unfortunately in the past has not taken place. I hope that today we can focus on it and take things forward.
Thank you. I think you've highlighted a couple of things that I wanted to speak about. The sense that I'm getting is that, do we feel that Karachi has now reached its capacity to hold the number of people that it, carries? As well as you mentioned about, probably Pakistan spending more money, time, investment on other cities. We often hear from Sindh perspective also, you often called Karachi, Hyderabad, and others. Our different districts and cities are not as popular or as developed as we see in other provinces. So looking at the density of the population that comes to Karachi for its resources, as we were talking a while earlier as well, that it's a cheaper city, so that has its own merits and demerits. What do you think, should the migration to Karachi be slowed down a little bit? Has Karachi reached to its capacity? What should we be doing in that regard?
About 15 years ago, the erstwhile city district government had conducted a survey about the number of people that come to Karachi. And the figure back in 2011 came to about 10,000 people who come to Karachi every day. And they come for a different number of reasons. They don't particularly come from different districts of the province. They actually come from different districts of the entire country. So you have people from KP, Balochistan, Punjab, Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, who are coming to Karachi. And that leads to unplanned urban development that Arif Saab was highlighting during his interview. That because the state has not complemented the rising number of people coming into the city with affordable housing, that leads to unplanned growth of, different settlements. And that again aggravates the problems that we face. What was the first question that you asked?
It was more about, it's conclusive. But should we be reducing or slowing down the migration, as well as do you feel Karachi has reached its capacity to?
I think Karachi, I love the city. Karachi is an extremely stretchable city. And I tell you, when I visit Karachi, in terms of land mass, it's still humongous. I mean, I can say this with confidence that a number of Karachiites would not have visited the entire city. So in terms of land mass which is available, I think there is tremendous potential. But the development has to be planned. If we will have restrictions on land allotments, if we have restrictions on land allotments, if we are unable to provide affordable housing to the lowest segment of our society, people who can't afford, then this will lead to more unplanned growth in the city, and that unplanned growth leads to more problems for the infrastructure. So my point of view is, like Arif Saab was highlighting, that my political party, my government is in the process of building 2.1 million climate resilient homes. We should as state be focusing on giving free of cost land to our people, incentivizing them to develop proper settlements so that their lives can be improved. I see madam sitting here, she works a lot with nationless people. They are not counted for, they are nationless, they don't have any identity, but they live in my city, they live in our city. They utilize our resources. So we need to come up with solutions for such people so that then we can work out a strategy which will have long-lasting solution for the people in the city of Karachi.
Great. So with that regard, what do you think, or what are your opinion about as we plan for Karachi? Because we know that, more than 30% of the people in Karachi live in Kachi Abadis. We have roughly around 68% of the residents who are from low income, and all of these unregulated housings and informal settlements that you've spoken about. What do you think about vertical development?
I think vertical development also... I think vertical development also has a cost. Karachi is not a new city, it's an old city. The infrastructure is old. The drainage, the sewage, the water lines are old. So if we start developing the city center vertically, I think it will aggravate problems unless we're able to completely redo the internal infrastructure. However, as I said, there is plenty of land mass available where such vertical developments can be planned, can be worked out. We've seen examples in Mumbai. We've seen examples. I visited Jakarta where they've actually transformed a Kachi Abadi into a total vertical development, incentivizing the local population. And this is a very interesting example that I'd like to quote. I asked the governor of Jakarta as to how they managed to convince people. They said the people were living in a informal settlement where the room was about 50 meters only. And the entire family used to reside in that 50-meter room. They had communal washrooms and communal kitchens over there. So they came up with the idea of merging that entire land, taking it vertical, and incentivize the people that instead of you living in poverty, we'll give you a proper accommodation of about 100 meters, which was one big room, one separate washroom, one separate kitchen for the respective family that was living over there, and they gave ownership rights of that unit to that particular family. So I think the informal settlements have to be transformed in this manner, and we have plenty of examples now in the world, but for that we will have to come up with out-of-the-box solutions. The conventional way of approaching these things would lead us to financing issues, would lead us to legal issues. There has to be a policy where we decide that vertical is the way forward for those informal settlements, and we carve out a strategy. And then we should not dispute that by going to one investigating agency or to another court or to a tribunal. We should let the state develop that. With regards to the overall city, I think vertical developments in newer parts of the city where the infrastructure will be laid afresh. I think vertical is the way forward, and we have Dubai, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur as great examples of such development.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to hear that, at your level or at the decision-making level, there is a discussion about the vertical, development, because I think, as you mentioned, in the informal settlements, that's where we can, think differently and out of the box and do what other countries are doing.
But we need to come out of discussion level. We need to get into action mode, which unfortunately is lacking in our country.
And what can we do to enhance that?
I think there needs to be more coherence and cohesiveness in our minds to come up with solutions. We need to start trusting people. We might have issues. We might not like the other person's opinion. But not liking the opinion leads to inaction, and inaction is never good for the society.
Absolutely. So that also takes me to another question I had. We have a Karachi Strategic Development Plan 2047. And some of these discussions that we are having are going to be a part of that, and obviously, rollout will come from there. But we also see, being a Karachiite and living in Karachi, I also see that, there are multiple development governance structures that we have. We have KMC, we have Sindh government, we have DHA, we have cantonment. How do you see bringing all of these independent mindsets on the same page to, think constructively?
Just to give you the number, 38 entities operate in Karachi.
Wow.
And 26 entities are provincial, 12 entities are federal. And that leads to more challenges. I keep advocating that every single institution should work within its domain, but there has to be some sort of a pyramid structure where whoever is leading the city, whether it is a bureaucrat or a political leader, by way of the office of the mayor, there has to be a structure where they respond to the leader of the city, because at the end of the day, it is the leader who is accountable, it is the leader who is answerable. So that is where we are lacking. So the master plan that we're working on right now, we're trying to engage with all entities. Provincial entities are easier for us to manage because they are locally present over there, and the provincial government has some sort of say and relevance in their matters. We face issues with regards to federal authorities and federal entities. So we're trying to engage with them. We don't want to fight. We don't want to create friction. We want to come up with meaningful solutions which enable every single entity to work within its domain. But overall, there has to be a master plan for the entire city, not just a portion of the city.
How likely do you think it is?
It's difficult, but not impossible.
Okay. I'll just get to the last question, and then I know you have another appointment as well. We know that Karachi is losing its green cover. And from your perspective, what is a good population responsive climate strategy, or few components that we should be considering?
When I was studying, it was taught that 20% of the country has to be green for a balanced economy. We don't, as a nation, we don't thrive on data, but it's a guesstimate that perhaps in Karachi, we have only 5 to 6%, which is the green cover. The reason is that we've started cutting the old indigenous trees. We've not focused on planting indigenous trees. We came up with the concept of these monocorpus plantation, which was faster in time, and the entire city, instead of having neem, bargad, the local trees, they ended up having this fast-growing monocorpus tree, which has wreaked havoc with our environment and also with our municipal infrastructure. So what we're doing is, Karachi has recently become a part of climate action plan, the C40 cities. The city council has approved a climate action plan for Karachi, which focuses on fair distribution of water, improvement of your municipal infrastructure, development of open spaces and green spaces, urban forests. We've started to also convert our municipal infrastructure on solar and wind energy. Karachi City Council is now the first council of Pakistan which is now running on solar. So we have an idea now, we have a way forward approved by the council with regards to the next 50 years, and we are hopeful that we would be encouraging people not just to plant the tree, but actually to maintain it, to own it so that it can be sustained.
Thank you. I think population should also be at the center of the discussion that you are having, because every individual counts when it comes to the impact on climate. With that, thank you so much for joining us.
Since I don't know whether it's been shared here or not, population planning has been an issue that unfortunately has not been prioritized by our governments. In my life, the only time I heard a narrative on population planning was during the term of Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, do bacche hi kafi hain. This is when I was growing up. I don't know whether it had the right impact or not, but after that, we've not had any such narrative. In the province of Sindh, we've started to work on contraceptive, we are working on vasectomy. So these things are being done. We are more cognizant of this challenge, and I hope that at the level of every single province, this issue would be prioritized, because the ballooning population and the population not being trained and skilled, having malnutrition issues, having stunted growth, would have a much bigger problem in the next 20-25 years for Pakistan.
Absolutely, and just being a representative of an INGO that works, across Pakistan, but essentially with Sindh government, I can vouch for what you're saying, because we have a fantastic experience of working with Sindh government in, taking this cause and ensuring that women get the right kind of choices when it comes to contraception as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that insightful discussion. We will now be moving forward to our session 10, which is titled Empowering Women and Their Choices. Our panelists for this session include Arif Hasan, a lawyer and CEO of Imkan Welfare, Shamamatul Ambar Arbab, former president, Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Tahira Abdullah, Development